What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave each and every Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I take to the airwaves, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook to talk some football. We're in the off season right now, but that does not mean we do not have a jam-packed show each week like we do per usual. And this week I have another very special guest. Very happy to introduce him. He's over from Cover One. Once again, I've been stealing the Cover One guys left and right for the Cave, but they're all just so amazing. So it's just so easy to bring them on and shoot the shit about football every single week. And this week's no exception. I am very excited to bring on Aaron Quinn from Cover One. Aaron, thank you for taking the time to spend time in the cave with me this week.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Sorry for I know I can be tough to get a hold of sometimes, but you were patient with me and my forgetting to get back to you that one time. So I appreciate you sticking with me, and I'm happy to be on, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, no problem at all. Like I said, I know you and all the guys over at Cover One are extremely busy dudes with all the stuff you guys do. All the shows you guys work, and I know you guys got a lot going on. But with that being said, if you don't know who Aaron is, which I think you probably do if you're watching my show, but Aaron is a content creator, as mentioned, for Cover One. He's the co-host of the Cover One Buffalo podcast with Greg. He's a digital art creator. He does a bunch of thumbnails, behind the scenes stuff, which I do want Aaron to speak to because on the outside, you're not really sure what Aaron might do, what Dave might do, what these other creators might do, but being a digital art creator is not easy. I mean, I try to do my best with, the stuff that I do with the Cave and the backgrounds. It's like I sit there for hours trying to come up with a concept I like. And, you guys just knock it out of the park with some of the stuff you're able to do.
Yeah, appreciate it. It isn't always easy, right? I was just actually having this talk with a friend, not football related today.
Mm-hmm.
I do freelance graphic design as well. And whenever it's creative type work and you're not just making it for yourself, you're making it for other people, it can get real dicey, right? Because everybody has different views of how things they like, the styles that they like. Not everybody sees it the same, but we've got a great crew to work with. The guys have great feedback, and so over the years it's gotten better. I've gotten better at doing it as well. Some of the guys have taken it on themselves to learn some of that stuff and get better. So we're slowly getting better. Excitingly, we got a new graphics intern here this year. We see you guys all saw the additions of the content creators that Cover One got, which were fantastic, and excited about that team that we're building. But we finally got a graphics guy to come in and help because I think it's a big part of content creation. People just talk about the podcast and the content that you make, but you can get lost on social media so easy if you don't have something that pops or on that YouTube feed. If you're scrolling through and you can scroll right by a video. And so we don't put too much into all those graphics, but we do try to focus on it to make sure that somebody scrolling through that we make something that pops enough for them to stop and at least look at it. Cause we're all competing for eyes, man. And if you can get one little thing to give you an advantage, you got to pound on it.
Absolutely. I mean, you spoke to it perfectly. It's all about, the first impression, right?
Yeah.
With, whoever you're interacting with, in real life, getting to know somebody, but even on the internet, it's like, if you see something attractive, that's what you're going to attract to initially. And it's really half the battle that goes unseen, amongst any kind of content creation. So I have all the respect in the world for, being able to do that at such a high level, if you will.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, that's the guest spotlight. Obviously, like I said, if you're watching the Cave, you know who Aaron is. But let's move right into the second portion of the show. This is going to be the recent events. Not too much news. That's
a good thing, right? This time of year, no news is good news.
Yeah, you'd like to think, right? But the NFL it's always up to something, whether it's good or bad. We all know that very, very well. But we'll start with something that Aaron, because I follow you on Twitter, and I know you're not a big fan of talking about, but
all right,
betting ratings were released, and I don't know why I added that last Bills thing, but anyway, betting ratings were released, and there was one positional group released that I was a little confused about, and that was the linebackers group, and the lowest it got to in the top 10 was 85 overall, and Matt Milano nor Tremaine Edmonds made the list. I don't know if you've played Madden, if you play it recently. Do you think these guys are worthy of an 85 overall to be inside that top 10?
So I'll be totally honest. I don't play a lot of Madden anymore. I used to play it a lot. I'm one of those guys that bitched about it for years. I didn't like the way the game was going. I also got mad about ratings, and eventually I just said, you know what, I'm going to stop giving EA my $60 every year. Every once in a while I'll get, I do have a PlayStation and stuff. So every once in a while there'll be like such a sale on one 2 years prior that I'll pick it up for whatever, $10, $15 and play a couple years ago one. But in terms of the the ratings lists, really one, I think outside of those top guys, when you get like the 99s and stuff, the way Madden's developed now is that these guys all have a chance in season to change how those rankings go, right? Like the game releases and starts, but then you're going to get download updates and those guys will change. I don't particularly care where Bills players rank in this. I don't particularly care where players rank in this. Somebody always seems upset by it, and the players don't seem to think that it matches where things actually are. So I don't know how much I worry. I do think, outside of Madden rankings per se, if we were just ranking those players at their positions, I do think both the Bills linebackers should be somewhere in that, hovering in that top 10. I don't know that I necessarily need them both to be in the top 10.
Right.
But as a unit, outside of these ranking lists, I think as a unit themselves, I think that unit's a top 5 unit in the NFL, in my opinion, when you have Milano and Edmonds on the field together. So I think they're better than the Madden rankings are showing. I think Tremaine Edmonds is much better than Bills fans want to give him credit for. But the national media, I will say I'm surprised that neither one of them were in it, because the national media, we saw the ESPN thing where players, coaches, executives put Tremaine Edmonds up there. And so usually when it comes from the outside of Bills Mafia, Tremaine Edmonds is rated much higher. So I'm surprised he wasn't in there for that, but I don't know much about how they do the rankings and how they compile those things. So hopefully Tremaine Edmonds proves everybody wrong and works his way up in those Madden ratings here this year. And whether it's with the Bills or not, earns himself a nice contract.
Absolutely. And, Tremaine Edmonds is one of the most polarizing conversations on the Bills roster right now. It's either you love him or you hate him, it seems, these days. And there's very few people in the middle. And I feel like I find myself in the middle. I'm not dying to get rid of him like I feel like some people are. And I'm also not sitting here telling you that he's going to guaranteed get another contract either. But, same with Dawson Knox. At this point, I think prior to 2021, I was ready to cut that guy for the nearest traffic cone I could find. I was one of those people.
Yep.
But, obviously he proves everybody wrong in 2021 and he explodes, right? Tremaine Edmonds, I'm not nearly to that extent that I was with Dawson Knox, but, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and pound the table that he resigns, another extension with us after next season. So he's definitely going to be somebody that has to prove himself. And I do think he would be considered a top 7 most important player on the Bills roster. I saw the Air Raid guys do a top 10 most important players, I think it was, going to next season. I can't remember where Tremaine ranked, if he was in that top 10, but I'd say he's in that top 7.
It's a tough one for me. The defense is really tough to value individual players, right? I think the safety position is probably the most valuable on that defense in terms of if you take those players out, their replacement level behind them isn't very good. I think you lose a lot. And what having Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde allow you to do on defense and allow Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier to do, I think is a total game changer. Outside of those guys, and Trey White, of course, when Trey White's healthy, I think that just changes everything that the defense can do. The individuals aren't as great as the whole unit, the whole scheme. And I think, we hear all the coach speak of the 1 of 11, doing your 1 of 11. And all that matters, and it matters on the offensive side of the ball. But on the offensive side of the ball, if Josh ain't going, the offense ain't going, right? Like, where on the defensive side of the ball, I do think as long as everyone's in there where they're supposed to be within the scheme, doing the things they're supposed to do within the scheme, I think they're going to be all right. The Tremaine Edmonds stuff, this one's a really tough one because I don't know that we've really gotten a true evaluation of Tremaine. He's very young. He's just 24 years old. And I know people don't want to hear that excuse anymore that he's young. Yeah. He's been in the league long enough to get over that young excuse. But the Bills have not done a good job in putting a true one tech in front of him, which matters when you're playing linebacker, keeping a linebacker clean. They haven't really been able to do that. And the defensive line as a whole hasn't really done a good job of keeping blockers off that second level. And then what Tremaine's been asked to do because of the lack of a true penetrating one tech, the type of gaps that he's supposed to be playing in the run, like people will see a highlight of a big run being given up by the Buffalo Bills defense, and they'll see Tremaine Edmonds, what they think is an over pursuit of it, but he is playing to the scheme where he's supposed to be within the scheme. And maybe somebody else isn't doing their job and it allows that big run to go, but you see Tremaine Edmonds' lanky self, his pterodactyl self, taking off, and it looks like he's missing. And granted, sometimes he is making mistakes. Matt Milano makes these same mistakes that Tremaine Edmonds does, but nobody wants to talk about the mistakes Matt Milano makes, and
True.
everybody wants to talk about every single mistake Tremaine Edmonds makes. I think they're closer in style and in the type of player they are. I think Milano makes more splash plays, but Tremaine Edmonds prevents a lot of stuff with his length and athleticism in the middle. So it doesn't show up. It's not quantitative. It doesn't show up in stat sheets. So I'm still high on Tremaine Edmonds. I think, to that conversation before, you were saying that people, I'm more in that middle ground. Like, I'd like to have him back. He's 24. I think he's a good part of this defense. This was a number 1 DVOA defense last year. They've been in the top 5 since he's been here. He's a big part of what they're trying to do. I don't know if I want to tie up a ton of money at the linebacker position, but I'd be happy to extend him. I don't know that he's also going to get the type of money that people are concerned. I don't think he's going to get Fred Warner type
Oh,
money. I don't
yeah,
think he's going to
no
get that top
chance.
of the NFL type stuff. So I'm in the middle. I'd like to get him back. I think the age still works for me, having him as 24, and you can get him on a full contract and get him in here in his prime. You've put a lot of work into him. There's a lot of investment in Tremaine Edmonds, and he's a captain. And don't discount what being a captain means to Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane.
Oh,
They
yeah.
care about that stuff.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, the leadership, the foundation in the locker room setting is so important, and Tremaine Edmonds being a captain, that's going to hold a lot of weight. So you'd like to think that it would take a lot of Tremaine Edmonds screw ups to for them to consider him, somebody they did not want to bring back.
Yeah, you think.
And not to mention, like, you really did touch on a very good point. Matt Milano does make a lot of splash plays, whereas Tremaine Edmonds, he's just making the routine play, the play that maybe he's expected to make when it comes to be the time. But somebody that
Right.
does that relatively consistently is very valuable to a football team.
Totally.
And
Or
then
the throws that don't happen because he's taking
so
up that
big.
lane, or he's
Yep.
clogging that. And again, that's not going to show up on the stat sheet, but those lead to either the quarterback holding the ball for a second and getting a hit, or the quarterback then having to go to a spot that maybe also isn't open and throwing a bad ball somewhere else. Like, all those things sort of piggyback off each other, but it doesn't show up in the box score stat, which a lot of fans look at. It doesn't show up in your PFF grades and things like that. So PFF doesn't grade him well or things like that, but it's there, it's on the film. And that's where sort of this world of, is it analytics or film, sort of, that argument gets lost. And I do think in some instances, there's things that don't show up in analytics that do show up on film. And that's why you hear Robert Saleh, Bill Belichick, and all these defensive-minded, great NFL minds, great NFL coaches, they gush about Tremaine Edmonds. And then fans are like, he kind of sucks. And it's like, well, those guys are the ones watching the film, breaking down this team and seeing that he's clogging lanes. He's disruptive in different ways. Again, that doesn't show up and it doesn't look sexy on TV, but they see that value. And I don't know if that value is monetarily going to get him into that, like I said, that top upper echelon of linebackers. I do think he needs probably more splash plays to get in there, but it all matters.
Yeah, 100%. You spoke to every point about Tremaine Edmonds positively that you possibly could, and I don't want to beat this horse too into the ground, but he's a guy that I really don't expect to be demanding a high amount of money either. He seems to have really molded into the team first mentality. You never really see him, running his mouth, or he's never really in somebody's face either. He seems to be really molded into this locker room and, really focused on the fundamentals and the core values that this team has at heart. So the more we have this conversation throughout the offseason, the more I have it with individuals like yourself, makes me think that, he's probably going to be sticking around. Signs point to him signing. So with that being said, let's move on to the next piece of recent events news. This has been a rumor, so I'm not sure how convincing it may be, but over the last couple of weeks now, I didn't mention it last week, but I did see it. And I was like, you know what, how true is this? So we follow a week up and I'm still seeing this rumor, and it's coming out a little bit more and more from small Browns beat writers and people around the Twitterverse. And it sounds like Deshaun Watson kind of may not get a full game suspension. And at least for me, I kind of find that flabbergasting, but that's, where the NFL is the NFL.
Yeah, this one's hard for me. I mean, if the things that I've read about are true, I don't think he should ever play in the NFL again. Especially when you look at some of the things that have happened to players like a Josh Gordon over marijuana use, being suspended indefinitely. the NFL just seems to get this stuff wrong every time they have an opportunity to make a stand or set precedent. They seem to get it incorrect. So I wouldn't be shocked. I won't be shocked if it's 8 games, if it's less than people want. Um, I would have a really hard time if I was a woman that's an NFL fan, especially a Browns fan, with this entire situation. I'm having a hard time with it just being a dude, knowing that I think what happened is true. I think where there's a little bit of smoke, there's fire. I don't know if all 26 accusations are accurate, but definitely there's a handful of them that have to be in
Only
this.
takes one.
Yeah, it really does only take one. And so I think it needs to be much more serious. I think the NFL really needs to set a precedent with this. There's maybe a chance that these rumors got put out to sort of gauge the public opinion and gauge how people would react to something like this. So that's a possibility as well. And if that's the case, then I would hope, from the things I've seen on Twitter, it seems the public isn't happy with 8 games.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds like most people I've heard from, most people I talk to, it's got to be a full season at a minimum. People want an indefinite suspension until all this is sorted out. So I think there's a good chance the NFL drops the ball on this, goes with the 8 games. And if it's 8 games, Deshaun Watson's going to fight that and get that knocked down to a month.
Yeah,
Or
really.
so, he'll probably get it cut in half and it'll be a month of football and then he'll be back playing. And I don't know, news cycles are weird. What people are upset about are weird. So I don't know if this will be a thing that remains all season for the Browns or if the suspension will get served and everyone will move on. But I won't be happy. If it's an 8 game thing, I won't be happy. I'll feel bad for the female fans of the NFL because clearly the NFL has shown time and time again that they just don't seem to care.
Yeah, literally. That's pretty much what it comes down to is the NFL doesn't care. The NFL wants to make money. And they're in a position where they know that no matter what they do, they're not going to lose money because
Yeah.
it's just such a beast in the entertainment business in this country.
But
Um,
with that, like, they have that type of clout, right? Like a couple of years ago was that there was that big boycott over the Kaepernick stuff, or people
uh,
supposedly said they were going to boycott, and they still turned record profits. Like people said, if they put the end racism and all the sayings on the field, that they were going to stop watching, they were going to boycott the sports, and they still make record profits. So really, the NFL, I guess my problem is they do have the ability to maybe do more than they do and take stands and know that the business isn't going to get rattled or shaken because they
no.
took a stand on something. And so I would actually prefer them knowing, like exactly what you said, like they know that they can kind of do what they want, to be more open to take a stand and say, hey, Deshaun Watson, this is bigger than you, right? This is about human decency, how you treat each other. And protecting the shield, they've made a big thing throughout the last 15 years of the Goodell era, whatever it's been, 20 years of the Goodell era, of protecting the shield and acting right and doing the right things off the field. Well, I can't think of a single instance. We've seen a lot of things off the field from NFL players over the last 20 years, and I can't think of anything that I've seen that is worse than the predatory actions that we've seen Deshaun Watson accused of. And if we don't know what the truth is, then I don't want to see him play until they figure out what the truth is.
Yeah, that's the part that I just can't get over. I mean, somebody, he went through the process. He wasn't convicted, obviously, right, of any criminal charges, but that doesn't change the fact that we don't actually know what happened. And like you said earlier, when there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, you
Mhm.
cannot turn away these accusations and act like, innocent until proven guilty. I mean, that only goes so far in some
Yeah, and not in
circumstances, right?
corporate, in the NFL and the CBA, it's not innocent until proven guilty. It
That
is
is
at the
true.
power of the commissioner, right? It's a private business. The commissioner doesn't have to abide by laws. And to the legal part of it, grand juries aren't totally always super accurate. Like people are actually guilty and get away with it in grand juries all the time because it doesn't take much to change the way a jury is going to think or to get an indecisive outcome. So just because you get through a grand jury does not mean you're innocent. It just means that you didn't get caught up in that criminal or civil action.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a point in time where over the off season when I was running the show, it's like I was talking about this on a week to week basis, and I almost still am. I mean, there seems to be some new piece of news coming out about Deshaun Watson regarding the situation, at least to some extent. And it's like it went from it started off at 20, and then to 22, and then to 23, and then to 24, and then all of a sudden we're up to 26, and then there were rumors of 28. It's like this number kept climbing and climbing, and I was like teetering on the fact that okay, maybe at first he'll get 6 to 8 games when it was around 20 because I really wasn't sure the state of the situation. And then we got to a point where, it was up to 26. And I'm like, how do they not at least give him a season in comparison to the Calvin Ridley situation? We all know what happened with him. How did they not at least give him a year? And now we're getting to the point where things have kind of started to die down. All of the cases were settled, for disclassified or unclassified amounts of money. I believe they never really released what happened, but everything's settled. The news is they're trying to get past it, and now all of a sudden I'm starting to hear of 6 to 8 games. So it's like, this is something that I think they're just trying to help blow over. And maybe you're right; they're trying to gauge the public reaction after this. All of the events have taken place to see how everybody would react, but I do think the 68 games is becoming more and more of a possibility, which is sad, but the unfortunate truth.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So the final piece of recent news that I wanted to touch on, doesn't have much substance to it, but a lot of teams are rolling with a new type of uniform or helmet, and or they're going back to something that they used to wear in the past. And the Bills, at least to my knowledge, unless I missed something, really haven't done anything yet. They really haven't changed anything up. And being a graphic designer yourself, I wanted to get your opinion on the old navy blue red helmet, the drought era jerseys that I forgot to upload a picture to StreamYard of, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The ones everybody hate.
Yeah, nobody needs to see them again. You don't need to
you hate them too. I don't hate them. I don't hate them as much as everybody does. I don't know why everybody seems to just.
I don't. The only reason I don't hate them is, even though it was the drought and there was some terrible moments in the drought, it was still a fun period of time. I was a young adult in the drought era, and just the hope every year and all that stuff. And I bought a bunch of those ugly jerseys. I had a Paul Pusluzzi jersey. I had a Trent Edwards at one point. Definitely had a Marshawn Lynch. I had a few of them. Willis McGahee. And they were hideous, and I wore them out, and I thought I looked cool. I wore them to clubs and stuff, and everyone's like, "What the hell is that jersey? That's gross." It was a tough combo. I would shoot those. I'd fire those ones off into the sun, and I don't ever want to see the Bills bring that back. I don't want that look back. If they're going to bring the look back, I think the 90s one is the one to bring back. I don't think it's going to happen this year. At this point, I'd be pretty shocked if we saw that get rolled out. I do think next year you could see a rollout with the alternate jersey, because I think they have to do it a year in advance with a new alternate jersey. So they could announce that red helmet now and that they would wear that, but they would have to wear it with their existing uniform options, which may look weird. I haven't really seen that combo together. I'm sure it would look fine. But I could see a scenario where they roll that out next year as a full alternate uniform option.
Yeah, I just hope they do something, because I think we have some of the best combinations. We have probably the best color combination in the NFL. Red, white, and blue is the easiest.
The current throwback's super clean too. The all white standing buffalo is one of the better throwbacks that are out there.
I think the all white's one of the best uniforms in the NFL. I mean, it's so clean, it's so beautiful. And I mean, if I go to buy a jersey, the all white is what I'm looking for. I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of white and blue pants though. Like, I love the white jersey, but the white and the blue pants is where I'm like, I'm not the huge.
Yeah. If I'm buying a jersey, it's blue, just because I don't trust myself with a white jersey, not to get it stained. The always great. I like all the all color combos. So I know a lot of people are not big fans of the all blue. I actually like the all blue quite a bit. I love the all white. I don't like swapping where it's the white jersey, blue pants, or blue jersey, white pants. I don't love that contrast. Give me it all or nothing.
Yeah, I gotcha. I don't know if I like I think the all red is probably third out of the three. All
yeah, I don't love the color rush, but I can live with them a game a year.
Yeah, same here, right? It's not that big of a deal. All right, not too much to really cover there. That's the recent news of the offseason. That's where we're at. But let's move on. We're going to get into the Q&A. For anybody that's in the comment section, this is your time to drop a comment, drop a question. And actually, there was something I wanted to touch on while we were talking about Tremaine Edmonds, and to kick off this segment, I wanted to start with that question. And he said, Joey Hatch says he better show up, Tremaine, because if not, they got his replacement from Baylor. Now, it's not really a question, but I wanted to ask, where do you think Terrell Bernard really kind of fits into this roster? Do you think he makes the roster? What do you think his roster spot's looking like next season?
Yeah, I think he makes the roster. I think he comes in as a special teams player. Mm-hmm. I think there's scenario where he becomes that third linebacker, that AJ Klein role, if they want to roll into that. I don't love people, after this draft, they saw his highlights and said, oh, we can go more to those third linebacker sets because he can do some stuff in coverage, right? He's more of a positionless linebacker. I think that the Bills are moving towards more positionless linebacker play into the future here, but I don't know. He's not going to come in, I don't believe, and make an impact as a defensive player all that much. And I don't love the idea of taking Taron Johnson off the field. I don't know why people
Yeah.
like this idea of adding a linebacker and removing Taron Johnson. I think if you ask me right now, I know we'll get into some questions later. If you ask me right now, Taron Johnson's top 3 to 5 slot defender in the entire NFL. And I think that's a way different position now than it was 10 years ago, where 10 years ago, your slot corner was the third best corner on your team, or the guy that was just smallest, where now slot defenders is kind of its own unique position in football, where it is guys that are maybe a little bit smaller, but because you're playing off coverage, like you can't get your hands on these guys. The wide receiver has way more field to work with. You're talking about passing off communication between a linebacker, safeties, corners. There's just so much more that goes on in that slot position, I think, than people realize. And so I don't love scenarios that takes him off the field. And I'm not totally sure that Bernard is a Tremaine Edmonds replacement necessarily. I think there's a path to that for him. That's going to be something that takes some time. I don't think Sean McDermott's going to hand over the keys to a rookie just because Tremaine Edmonds doesn't have the year that people want him to.
Yeah, I agree. And Terrell Bernard, I think this question would have been a lot tougher had Andre Smith not been suspended. I don't know how many games
Sure.
he ended up getting, but as far as making the roster, at least,
Sure.
Terrell Bernard definitely had a chance to open up when that all went down. But anyway, moving on to the first question that I had for you, being this is an interesting hypothetical. If NFL players were stocks, hypothetically, who would you invest in prior to 2022? The idea that the buy low, sell high
Right.
stock,
Yeah, I don't want to
right?
buy into Josh Allen, right? Because
Right,
everybody, that's
right,
Bitcoin, right? Everybody
right.
bought in. I'm too late. There's a bunch of billionaires already. They all bought in a couple years ago, riding that wave. I think, man, this one's a tough one. Trying to think here. I think is Justin Herbert still a low buy? I mean, I know that he's on the outside of the elite
Mm,
guys, so, and he's not quite at the Allen level. That might not be low enough to buy into, but he's a guy that I'd buy into his future
mhm.
on. Trying to think some other young QBs maybe. You know what I would buy, and Bills fans don't want to hear this. I would buy a small amount of stock in Tua.
Okay.
I don't think Tua will be great, but if he's ever going to have a breakout, now's the time, right?
Yeah.
They had Tyreek Hill, you got Waddle, you got all these weapons, you got all these running backs, you've got an offensive minded coach. If he can't be the guy they drafted him to be now, then he's never going to be that guy. And so I think that's a low price buy-in if you're buying a stock that Tua's one of the lowest rated starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that, if I bought into that, I think he could at least get to average with this team. I think he could be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL without, if he just plays slightly above average all year and just does enough to keep that ship correct. So I could buy in on that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great answer just because if these players were stocks, hypothetically, right, Tua's probably going to be one of the cheapest buys right now, especially as far as quarterbacks go. It doesn't seem like anybody is rooting for Tua. Nobody wants anything to do with him. Everybody's rooting against him unless you're a Dolphins fan, just because of all the unnecessary hype he gets from his teammates and the fan base. It just seems a little bit overblown. But I mean, from a market standpoint, hypothetically, Tua would be a great one just
They
because
put the
he
weapons
has.
around him, right?
Yeah, they put the weapons around
Another
him,
one.
and
I'm actually higher on this player than I am on Tua. And I think if anyone, not in 2022, but if anyone's going to come in and push the Bills in this AFC East, I think it's if Zach Wilson starts to take a step forward. He had a terrible rookie season, but what I'll say is he has all the things physically, all the traits that could make the new modern elite NFL quarterback, right? Making plays outside of the play, making big plays with his arm, being able to put the ball all over the field, being able to run around a little bit. He has a little bit of all that baked in. if he can get it right, and I think his ceiling is way higher than Tua's ceiling. I think his floor is also way lower, right? He's kind of that Josh Allen thing where a lot of teams are going to get suckered into thinking Josh Allen is going to take that big third-year leap. Not a lot of these guys are. I don't know if Zach Wilson is going to, but if I was buying stock, again, you can buy that Zach Wilson stock super low, and I think his ceiling's so high that that could be a good return on investment.
Absolutely. I mean, Zach Wilson is a great answer to that question, too. Another guy that not a lot of people would be high on. Robert comes in and says, for a non-quarterback, is Isaiah McKenzie a low buy? I think he's a low buy, but I think you're kind of capped at how much you're going to end up getting on return. Your return on investment probably won't be tremendous just because of the target share. He's not even guaranteed the starting slot receiver this season. You know, bringing in Jameson Crowder, you got Khalil Shakir in the mix too. You know, I think Isaiah McKenzie is certainly a low buy, but as far as, you know, getting a good return on investment, you're probably getting your money back. You probably aren't.
Yeah, he's a low buy because he hasn't exceeded over 280 something yards in a season.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I always come off as this Isaiah McKenzie hater, and I don't hate the guy. I like him as a player. I like him exactly for what he is. But man, I think Bills fans are way too high on this guy. We can get into hot takes later, but he'd be one of them for me that I don't even know if he's got a solid spot on this roster. So I would buy if it is a low buy, but I don't think there's an ROI there. That he's more of a penny stock kind of guy in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just because you bring that up, I'll touch on it later on, and we'll dabble into that in the hot take segment. But so the next Q&A question, that's a good one. Actually, I want to throw in somebody that I think I've going on. I believe when I first found this question, my answer was Kyle Pitts. I think he'd probably cost you a relatively pretty penny at the moment, but just because of the upside, people are saying, you know,
he's probably going to be a generational talent for sure.
Right. So it's like you buy the Bitcoin relatively, you're a little late on the investment. You missed the buy low period. You're a little late on it, but you know, you're hoping for that big boom. So Kyle Pitts would probably be my answer.
Yeah. I would say too, because my thing is, if you want a big boom, if you want to get that Bitcoin early in, it's got to be a quarterback, in my opinion, right? Like those are the guys that have the chance to have the most value. I think another two that I would consider would be Trevor Lawrence. And I don't know that the payoff would be in 2022, but if you buy low now, I think in the next year or two that he's going to be the guy that they thought he was going to be. And then Justin Fields is an interesting one to me because I actually think he was going to be the best quarterback in that class. Unfortunately, he's gone to the Bears, which is so far a dysfunctional organization for him, but they've got a new GM. They got a new coach. They're sort of a year behind what the Bills did, where they've got that rookie quarterback on his rookie deal, but now they're stuck in a year where they're trying to unload some of these bigger, older contracts. They're kind of revamping this team. That's going to take they get a lot of free agent money next year. And if they could load up some weapons for Fields in 2023, that could be one where you bought in low because he had a terrible rookie season. He's probably projected to have a bad year if you look at the Vegas odds and things like that. He's probably not going to have another good season this year, but I think that 2023 season, if they can use that free agency money that they have and the draft picks that they have and get something around him, that stock could blow up.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Trevor Lawrence is a great answer to that. Trey Lance, I think.
Trey Lance, yeah.
I think Trey Lance would be a great answer. Although I feel like the market would overhype his value right now. I feel like you'd be buying him a little bit more for a little bit.
Hurts could be one of those.
Hurts could be great. I like that answer. I mean, there's a lot of guys that fall to this pool of just tremendously high ceilings.
Just hoping they hit that yet. Right.
It's just kind of like taking your chance at a lottery pick with some.
Yeah, that's why I don't play the stock market. Right, it's the same idea. I'll swing and miss on a Trey Lance all the time.
Absolutely, I'm too scared to sit there and watch my stock
right
down. All right, but let's move on to question number 2. Which team do you think surprises everyone in a good and or bad way?
I do think Bills fans are sleeping on how tough Miami's going to be. I know I spoke about Tua a little bit earlier, and it's fun to sit here and say we're going to sweep the division and just roll through the division. But I think they're going to be annoyingly good. I think Indy is going to be in a team that presents some annoying problems. I think Matt Ryan's a bit washed. I don't think that type of QB is what you want to win with in the NFL anymore. A guy that can't move or can't do anything, but he's going to be an improvement over Carson Wentz, what they had a year ago. And I think Jonathan Taylor, I know the running back position is dying, but he would have been my vote for MVP last year if I had a voting interest in the MVP. That what he did, knowing that how much the game has changed. away from the running back position and how
Uh,
dominant he was at what he does. And for a team like the Bills, that's one of those teams where I don't want to run into a team like that in the first round of the playoffs.
what
If the Bills
happened?
don't get the bye, they're a physical football team. They're built for playoff football. And now not having Carson Wentz and having a guy in Matt Ryan who, again, he's not a quarterback that I don't think he's going to put the team on his back and win a lot of games, but I don't think he's going to make the mistakes Carson Wentz made. So I think that they could come out and I'm not going to say they're going to compete for the 1 seed in the AFC, especially with how stacked that AFC is. But a lot of people are talking about these other teams, your Bengals, your Chiefs, all these teams. And I think that they could kind of be sneaky in the middle there. And I don't know any teams that want to go up and play a physical team like that in the playoffs. In a bad way, I could see the Bengals taking a big step back. I think they had a very serendipitous run to the Super Bowl. The Bills getting knocked out of the playoffs, I think, helped them. They never wowed me in any of those games. We did a big playoff preview going into the playoffs, and all the other guys were nailed it and said, "Hey, I'm worried about the Bengals. I don't want to play the Bengals." And I was like, "Man, this doesn't make sense to me. Their offensive line sucks. Like their defense is fine. They can create these turns, but they're not a great defense. You know, they have Burrow and they got some offensive weapons, but I don't think that's enough to sustain success." So we'll see. They did some things in the offseason, but I can see them. They're getting a lot of hype still for what they were able to do in getting to a Super Bowl. I don't know that they are the team that they finished the season. I think they finished on a hot note, and that's part of it. Sometimes you got to just play hot at the right time, and that's the beauty of the NFL is it's one and done. If you can go on a streak and win 4 or 5 games, you get yourself to a Super Bowl. But I don't think they're the team that got to the Super Bowl. So I don't know that they're going to be able to sustain that kind of success.
Yeah, the Bengals, I'm right behind you on that for the Bengals. I mean, they defied the number one rule that I thought applied to football at all times. And that was if you can't block for your quarterback and he's constantly getting hit, you're not going to be able to win at a sustainable rate.
Yeah.
And they somehow survived through the postseason. Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times against the Titans, and they're somehow advancing to the Super Bowl. I mean, I bet against the Bengals every single time they played a postseason game. And
yeah, well, that's why they won, right?
Yeah, it had to be. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm convinced at this point they continue to steal my. That's part of my extreme dislike for them at the moment. But on a serious note, they really, I think people are starting to slowly realize now that the Super Bowl is slowly faded away that it was just the stars aligned for them, I guess, for lack of a better term. I think they miss. They might miss the postseason entirely if the Ravens aren't an injured football team.
I think the Ravens, I think the Ravens should win that division.
I agree.
So that could be a tough one for them.
Yeah, totally. And the Bengals, they're a team that they really have their work cut out for them. I mean, they're standing at the top of they're right above the clouds right now, and they're going to take a real tough fall to the ground.
And that NFC North could get real. Like I hate to talk about the Browns because of that. The whole Deshaun Watson situation really pisses me off. But if that ends up being a month, 6-week suspension, and then you get Deshaun Watson back, like Deshaun Watson still, regardless of who he is off the field, like what he has done in the NFL on the field, with that Browns team, with that offensive line, with that run game support, they've got a pretty good defense. Like that team could get right real fast, right, and be a team that knocks the Bengals down to that 3rd place in their own division.
Oh, yeah. And the Browns, I mean, with Deshaun Watson, like you said, off the field stuff aside, I mean, they're a terrifying football team on paper. If Deshaun Watson is able to play, you don't want to run into the Cleveland Browns. I mean, I view them as, probably the slightly better version of the Colts. I think the Colts defense is better just because Darius Leonard, and those linebackers at defensive front is a lot more ferocious than I would say the Cleveland Browns could be at times. But, you got Deshaun Watson, you got Nick Chubb, you got Kareem Hunt, that offensive line. And then they even have Amari Cooper, who is, on the downside of his career, granted. But the best receiver the Colts have is Michael Pittman, and they have Matt Ryan at quarterback. There's certainly a big difference there. So that Browns team is going to be a team to look out for if Deshaun Watson doesn't see a year suspension. A team that came to mind when I asked this question, or when I came across this question, was the Bucs, just because I have no actual solidified evidence for this theory. Let's just preface that. But the whole thing with Brady supposedly going to the Dolphins and then Belichick screwing the plan over, Sean Payton was supposed to meet him over there, that whole thing, it makes me feel like Brady doesn't want to be in Tampa for one reason or another, whether that was because of Bruce Arians and the feud they have, they had. Understandably, he's gone now, but something about that whole situation I feel like is going to have some sort of ripple effect. And I'm not saying the Bucks are going to be horrible; they're going to miss the playoffs. Maybe not even win the division, but I think everybody's expecting the Bucks to be that same 13, 14, 15, maybe 16 win team. I don't. I think I could see the Bucks hovering around 9 to 10, maybe 11 wins at most this season, and having a little bit worse of a year than we've seen in the past. And for some reason, that Tom Brady to the Dolphin situation has something to do with it. No reason to back it up, but that's my reason.
I can see that. I'm a little bit higher still on the Bucks. I've bet against Tom Brady too many years, and so I'm gonna not take a bet against him. All the stuff aside, I think at the end of the day, his legacy is so important to him, and he's such everything you hear about him. He's got that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant thing that once the lights turn on, the game turns on, he wants to win more than anybody else there's out there on the field. And as long as he's got that and has the weapons, which he does, and the offensive line, which he still has most of that together, and they've got quite a good defense. I still think that they're going to be formidable. That division is also going to give them a bit of a head start on some other teams too, right? Like Atlanta's not going to cause any problems for them. I don't know that Carolina's in a position to cause any problems for them. So being in a division like that's also going to give him a head start. Lucky for Brady going to all these divisions year in and year out throughout his career, that where the rest of the division just wasn't on par with their teams. But I can see them being one that, doesn't live up to everybody's hype. I think another one in a good way that could surprise some people. So every year I track toxic differential, which if people don't know, it's turnover differential plus explosive plays. So passing plays over 20 yards, rushing plays over 10 yards. Coach Brian Billick came up with this. I think it's a good way to track some of how a team performs. Mm-hmm. And last year when I was tracking it, the Philadelphia Eagles were in the top 5 week in and week out. And I was kind of keeping an eye on that because at the beginning of the season, it was like, man, this one doesn't make sense. Everything else makes sense. Yeah, Dallas was high up there. The Bills were up there all year long in the top 3. Indy was up there pretty good. And so it all made sense. And then you had 2 teams, really, the Vikings and the Eagles sitting there, not allowing a lot of explosive plays, creating their own, and then getting a lot of turnovers. And I think that's a sustainable path to winning football games. And so I wasn't shocked when Philly snuck into the playoffs, even though that their team doesn't have necessarily the talent that it probably is a playoff team. Mm-hmm. So I think that could be a team that comes out and wins their division. The NFC East is always wide open. I think everyone tries to hand that to the Cowboys every year because they're America's team and ESPN loves the Cowboys. So people try to hand that off. I don't think that's going to be a walk in the park for them. I think that Philly's going to challenge them there. And then I think the Vikings, I'm not as high on the Packers. I love Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback. I think but I think losing Devontae Adams is going to be huge for him. I don't think there's a lot of weapons there. They have a decent defense, but nothing wows me outside of Aaron Rodgers. And is he good enough to continue to make you a Super Bowl contender year in and year out? I don't know. But I could see the Vikings giving them a little bit of a push now that Zimmer's out of there. And you can, I think Justin Jefferson's about to take that step into being a legitimate top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. So they could be another team that maybe gets back into that contention, because 4 or 5 years ago, everyone was talking the Vikings were, bound for the Super Bowl. They were about to win a Super Bowl. And then sort of that Mike Zimmer wheels started to fall off and they were they were like a drought era Bills team that sometimes made the playoffs. They just weren't that good. So those are 2 teams I think could probably exceed some of the expectations that fans have of who they are.
Yeah, I like that Eagles pick a lot. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I asked, I can't remember who I had on my memory shot, but I asked, who is a team that comes to mind? It was Jake Jordan, actually. Who is the best team? A team that comes to mind as one of the best teams on paper. And I think the Eagles are in that conversation as far as best teams on paper. I mean, the defense, they have probably a top 3 defensive front in the NFL. Their front 4, Jordan Davis is like the 3rd or 4th guy in the defensive, in the interior rotation. It's like Jordan Davis is your 3rd or 4th option. It's going to get scary for opposing offensive lines. And their secondary, they got one of the top cornerback duos. They just drafted, his name's going to slip my mind right now, but they did just draft one of the top linebackers that slipped, I think to the 2nd or 3rd round because of some injury concerns. I think Quay Walker, that might be wrong. But regardless, I do think the Eagles are potentially a Jalen Hurts away from being a Super Bowl contender, and it's all really going to come down on his show. NFC contender. I mean, that's something.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts is really going to be the factor for that team. All right, we're moving right along. So I'm not gonna beat the dead horse with the Q&A question. So let's move on to the next segment. We're gonna get into the Would You Rather. I did preface to Aaron prior to the show. If you're not familiar with the Would You Rather segment, it's not about the situation you're bringing a player into, but I'm going to bring one player up, put him up against 5 other players, and you're going to tell me which player you would rather have as an individual. So the player that we're going to be stacking up against another 5 is none other than our newest acquisition on the defensive front, being Von Miller. So I'm going to put Von Miller through the gauntlet. Let me know who you'd rather have. Starting at number 1, we're going to go Von Miller against Jadeveon.
Oh, Von Miller all day, every day. That one's easy for me.
Yeah, I think that's an obvious one, right?
Yeah. I will for a couple of years. I was pounding the table for the Bills to get Jadeveon Clowney, but that's because I didn't even think Von Miller was a thing that the Bills could do. I would take Von Miller 10 times out of 10.
I didn't think Von Miller was a thing we could do this offseason. I thought it was going to be Chandler Jones at most. Was I thought? We'd come over with, but hell, Brandon Beane is Brandon Beane. All right, so that's meant to be an easy one. Number 2, it's going to get progressively harder. We're going to put Von Miller up against DeMarcus Lawrence.
How old is DeMarcus Lawrence now? It's right around the same.
Probably, I'd say slightly younger.
30. Let's see. Yeah, he's 30 years old. That's tough. I feel like this isn't to the Bills, right? This is just if I'm starting a team.
Right, and you need Super Bowl or bust next year.
Yeah. So I think I'm still going Von Miller just because of where he's been able to get production and that he has those Super Bowl rings. I think that experience matters. I think it gives him the edge over Lawrence.
I would agree 100%. Going into number 3, I don't know if this one's going to be difficult or not, but he's somebody that had a big part in the Bengals' success last year. And that's Von Miller against Trey Hendrickson. He got a lot of hype for rightful reason.
Yeah, I mean, again, now you're dealing with a bit of a younger player, although he's been in the league for a minute. He's a little bit longer in the tooth than people think. I thought. How old's Hendrickson? He's 27, so there's a little bit there. I think, man, this is a little tough. But again, if I'm going for, hey, I'm all in on a Super Bowl next year, I'm still going with Von for the experience that he has. And Hendrickson, while I like him and I think he's trending up, and to your kind of question earlier about stock, I wouldn't buy stock in him because I think the stock is high and I don't think he has much more to go. But if he can put together, it's sort of the same conversation that I have about Dawson Knox, right? He had that explosive season this year, but I really need to see him put together back-to-back crazy explosive seasons. And while we saw a little bit from Trey Hendrickson and the Saints, and we saw him really explode here with the Bengals, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if he is that guy or not. I think he is. But for right now, if I'm going for a 1-season run, I'm still going with Von Miller.
Yeah, I think the more you talk about it, the more I think about it. It's going to be hard for Von Miller to lose in this given scenario. But moving on to number 4, we're going to go Von Miller against Joey Bosa.
Yeah, I think this is a point where it's really hard for me to take the experience and the play of a Von Miller versus just Joey Bosa. If you line him up in the right situation, he's just that type of guy that is a just total game record changer. I think he can, if given the opportunity, can have the same type of plays that Von Miller has been able to make. So I would go with the Bosa here. I'd go with either Bosa. There we go.
Funny enough, go with either Bosa. That answers the next question. Yeah,
they're such freaks, and they're only, I think, going to get better to that Von Miller level, and that could happen this next year.
Yeah, and they're although age isn't really factored in too much here, they're both so much younger than Von Miller, and they're getting to a point where they really are dominant to that extent. And Nick Bosa specifically has, I don't think as much. I think Von Miller's been to 2 Super Bowls, right? And then Nick Bosa's been in a Super Bowl. He just played an NFC Championship game, so he's got that big stage experience that you're looking for. That you would pick a guy like Von Miller for. Nick Bosa is right there in that conversation. I think this year is a year where Joey Bosa himself could be finding himself in such a boat. If the Chargers are able to follow through on the talent that they have.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how Khalil and Bosa. I don't want Josh to have to deal with that.
Yeah, I don't either. And well, on that note, if Khalil Mack was on this list, you taking him against Von Miller?
I'm not. No, I think I'd still go Von over him. And I love Khalil Mack. I think he's a great player. I think he still has some production left in him. But I think again, he's been in the league a long time. He doesn't have the same even type of experience that Von Miller has. So again, experience trumps out of them being similar in their careers where they're
Yeah,
at.
absolutely. I agree. I honestly, now that I wish I would have thought through it more, but the experience is just so valuable in this kind of
Yeah.
conversation. It kind of makes it redundant. But anyway, all right. So that's the Would You Rather segment. We're gonna get into the hot take. I don't know if you have one. I know you kind of alluded to one earlier, but if you wanted to speak to it, if you did think it was hot enough, shoot your best shot.
All right. So there'll be sort of a couple, I guess. One, I think, yeah, Bills fans are way too high on Isaiah McKenzie. I think Isaiah McKenzie, to me, I'm not sure there's a roster spot for him. I think he's a bit redundant into this roster. Jameson Crowder is going to come in, I believe, be that starting slot. I think Khalil Shakir gives you some opportunity to have some flexibility in the slot. I think he can do some of the gadget plays that Isaiah McKenzie brings to the table. I actually don't even think Isaiah McKenzie is all that great at the gadget plays. People want to bring up those jet motion sweeps and the different types of passes that they get the ball in Isaiah McKenzie's hands, and that's fun and he's fast. But to me, he presents straight line speed. He's not like a Debo Samuel, or he's not one of these guys. And we hear fans say that all the time, like, hey, use him like San Francisco uses Debo or somebody uses these guys. He's not that guy. He's not shifty. He's not big. He's not going to break tackles. He's really straight line speed. And as long as he's got a clearing of blockers, like, yeah, he can make something happen. He's electric with the ball in his hands. He's not creating that on his own. And so I think that you can replace that with either Shakir. I think that you can get some of that out of James Cook, right? I'm not as high on James Cook as a lot of Bills fans are, but I think that he can take some of those touches and still also be a running back. And again, Shakir is also still going to be a wide receiver, where McKenzie just seems really, he's this gadget trick guy, and maybe he can be a slot, but nobody's really been able to lean on that so far in his career. And I don't know that anyone trusts him in the kick return game. And if he was a solid kick returner, then I would say absolutely we have a guaranteed spot for him, or a punt returner. We have a guaranteed spot for him because he can do multiple things. You can have him as a game day active guy, and he can be your gadget guy, but he's also going to be your primary returner. And we can drum up 3 to 4 plays, touches for him in the offense. And then that's good enough for me to give this guy a roster spot. If he's not going to return kicks, man, I don't know if I've got a spot on the roster of a team that's this deep, with other positions that are super important to having depth on it. Offensive line, defensive line. We know the Bills want to have a steady stock of that defensive line coming in. Defensive back, I think, especially with the Trey possibly being out the first month of football, like, you're still going to have some extra defensive back help. So to me, I'm watching that slot battle and the return battle a ton coming up here in camp, because if Isaiah McKenzie isn't able to make himself earn the trust back in that punt return game, if he's not able to get that back from the coaches, I think he's redundant. I don't think he offers enough to give him a roster spot. So that's one hot take. And then my other one's not super hot, but I love Gabe Davis. I think he's going to be a good wide receiver too. I think Bills fans are taking it way too far with Gabe Davis hype, in that I've seen people talk about, can he get all pro numbers, things like that? Like, can he increase this production consistently? So I think people need to pump the brakes a little bit on where their expectations are at a Gabe Davis, and give that love to Ed Oliver. Not enough people are on the hype for
No,
Ed
you're
Oliver. So
right.
I feel like those roles need to be reversed, where people need to say, pump the brakes a little bit on Davis, and let's talk about Ed Oliver maybe being in the conversation for all pro. So those are my hot takes for the Bills.
Hey, I mean, you knocked the hot. You said they're lukewarm. I mean, I think those are about as hot as they get when in regards to the Bills. To touch on your original point, being the Isaiah McKenzie, that one's hot. That one's really hot. Not
On
making the
Twitter it
roster
is, yeah.
officially. Like, yeah, I mean that would get you slaughtered in the
Yeah.
open streets of Buffalo
Yeah.
on Twitter if you say something.
Isaiah
like
McKenzie will search that, find it, and he won't like it. He'll be mad at me.
Yeah, and then he'll tweet about it, and then all of a sudden you got more people. Yeah, I mean, but that is I'm glad you said that, because when although I don't think Tavon Austin's a guy that I think is going to see a roster spot when he was brought on. Obviously the initial thought is he's brought in to make the training, make the offseason more competitive. Obviously every positional group, they like to have competition. Every roster spot needs to be earned, unless you're Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs or Trey White. The list goes on. Anyway, but when Tavon Austin was brought on, I'm thinking to myself, like, if hypothetically there was a path to the roster for this guy, I think it's Isaiah McKenzie's spot. I think Isaiah McKenzie is the one that gets threatened by Tavon Austin if there is some universe where he's brought on, it's Isaiah McKenzie's spot that kind of gets put in jeopardy.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just, you know, I also don't think Isaiah McKenzie's a guy that you can use. Like you mentioned, nowhere near like Debo Samuel. I think there are other guys that could be better gadget players, not on the Bills in particular, but there are a lot of people that go out there on Twitter and say, "Oh, this player can be used like Debo. This player can be used like Debo. This player's like Debo." Blah blah blah.
There's only one Debo.
Yeah. There's only one. There's only one Debo, and two. There's a lot more out there that I feel like are closer to Debo than Isaiah McKenzie will ever be. And on that note, too, there was a time, I think it was, going into 2020, the postseason, if you will. And, we kind of stopped seeing those gadget plays, I feel like, going to the postseason. We weren't really seeing Isaiah McKenzie utilized in such a way as much as, we had earlier in the season. I don't know why, but I don't think he really was the most effective in such situations. You did touch on that point. So, it's really hot, and I did enjoy that one a lot.
Yeah.
The other one was the Gabe Davis. I do agree. He's not going to put up all pro numbers. I think this year's I think this year's the year Stephon Diggs kind of gets back to putting up the pretty stat sheets on a week-to-week basis too. He kind of was a little bit more, although he had nearly 1,200 yards this season. He wasn't obviously 2020 explosive. I think he can get back to that level this season. And we see those kind of numbers from Diggs. And Ed Oliver, another guy that deserves so much more praise. I think he could lead the Bills in sacks. If Von Miller isn't the guy, I think Ed Oliver is going to be the one that benefits the most from the Von Miller signing. He's going to go nuclear.
Same as the conversation about Tremaine Edmonds earlier in this episode, where the Bills have not done a good job of putting a true one tech in front of Tremaine Edmonds. They've also, that same exact problem that they've had is a problem for Ed Oliver and him playing out of position and not playing next to a true one tech. So now he's going to be freed up, not only the gravity that Von Miller pulls and the attention that an offensive coordinator has to pay to Von Miller. You're not going to leave him one-on-one with almost any tackle in the NFL. But now you also have a true one tech playing beside Ed Oliver. And so I think that is a double bonus for a guy like Ed Oliver, who I believe in the second half of the season last year was already playing at an all pro level. I think that he can maintain that here even. And honestly, he's the player for the Buffalo Bills this year that I am the most excited to see, because I think the addition of Von Miller, the addition of a true one tech, his ascension to where he is at in his career is all coming together at a perfect moment. He's playing for a big contract, and I think he just absolutely explodes, and the Bills have no choice but to hand this guy some big money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hope to God you're right. Ed Oliver's a guy that works his ass off each and every play. I mean, this dude he's got a motor that never stops. You always hear the endless motor with pass rushers. They need to keep their legs moving, and they got to keep going to the quarterback at all times. I mean, Ed Oliver defines that on the inside, and every point you made is spot on. I do think Ed Oliver is going to have one hell of a season. But on that note, too, I did have this is also something you touched on. You touched on a lot of great points with the hot take here. My hot take was James Cook's role will not be as big as everyone expects it to be. And that's not only going to this season, but I just think in general, I don't think James Cook's ever going to be this 3-down back or this early down back even that is, on this football team that is dominating snaps, that is seeing early down workloads. I just don't think James Cook is that guy. He wasn't that guy in college. We heard after James Cook was drafted, it was either, I think it had to be after, right? Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott came out and said, he's our J.D. McKissic replacement. I think I can't remember which of the Bills executives said it, but if J.D. McKissic was in mind and then you go and bring in James Cook as your replacement, I mean, J.D. McKissic was never going to be that kind of guy for this offense. So you can't expect James Cook to be drafted onto this team, and we're going to all of a sudden elevate him into said role, in his first season, second, maybe even third year. And we know how the Bills operate their backfield, right? It's never just a one running back dominated room. At the end of last season, we saw Devin Singletary get a little bit more, individual reps. Just himself in the backfield as Zach Moss slowly got eliminated due to injury. Obviously, I can't even remember who the other guy's name was at this point. Like Matt Breida, he kind of lost touches later down the line. So I just don't think James Cook's role is really as expanded as I feel like a lot of fans are kind of hoping it's going to be.
Yeah, I don't think that's that hot of a take. I mean, I think it is, again, on Twitter. I think people will I think there's a lot of hype about what he's going to insert into this offense. I think that comes from like the Madden fantasy world. too, where like people just think, hey, I'm going to put this real fast guy that can catch on and everything's going to be better. I think that they've tried to manufacture him some touches. I think he'll get a decent amount of touches and have some production, but yeah, I don't expect him to entirely change this offense or totally push guys out. I think he'll slowly be brought on. I don't think it comes out of nowhere and he just starts killing it. He wasn't that productive in college, and some people say, well, hey, he has low mileage, and point to his brother. He's not his brother. He's not that type of running back. He doesn't have the same type of vision. He doesn't have the same type of contact balance. He's got to learn a lot about being a running back and before he becomes a major part of any offense. Until then, I think he's more of a third down back, pass catching back, and a little bit of a guy that it's a little bit of a tell when he's in, because that he's not staying in for pass protection. He's not probably running the ball a whole lot in between the tackles. So, but I think where he could sort of benefit himself this summer is if he can prove that, again, back to the Isaiah McKenzie point, if he can prove that, hey, I can do those same things Isaiah McKenzie was doing, which is a super limited role, but I can also be that third down back and I can also do this, then that makes it okay a little bit more. And maybe instead of the 3 touches that he was going to get, maybe he can find a way to get 6 touches a game, and that adds up throughout a season. So he could have some production. But yeah, I think fans' idea of where his production is going to be is way off, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think this whole narrative of needing that breakaway speed, needing a player that can expand the field to some capacity is getting a bit overblown. And, I think people are expecting James Cook to be that not field stretcher, because that's obviously more of a wide receiver term, but that player that has that home run ability. And, James Cook, granted, he does have it. He's not going to be used in said role where he's going to get so many opportunities where every single play he's going to that kind of threat, and he is just not that kind of player. Like you said, he's not his brother. He's far from Dalvin Cook. And Dalvin's on a whole different level, just in terms of most running backs in the NFL, let alone his own blood. So I completely agree with everything you said there. All right. So with the hot take wrapping up, we're going to move into the final segment. I know you mentioned you're not too good at trivia.
Terrible.
But
yeah, I might get your lowest score in the cave. We'll see.
Hey, I mean, 0 points has been the lowest, so you can't go any lower than that.
Hey, perfect. Set the bar.
Let's see how you do. You might surprise yourself.
All right.
So just to give you, I forgot I didn't give you the lowdown of how this works. So the Caveman quiz game goes as follows. If you're new around here, this is how the quiz game works. I'm going to give Aaron 5 NFL quiz questions. One's going to be an offseason events, stats, history, draft, and awards question. He's going to be able to pick the difficulty: easy, medium, and hard. Easy is 10 points, medium is 20, hard is 30. You're going to get a follow-up true-false question. If you get the question correct, that's worth half of the original amount. You get 1 mulligan per game, which I'll allow you to use anytime you get a question wrong. If you have it at the end of the game, you can go back and use it on a different category. And then there's a final wager question. If you know how Final Jeopardy works, you have 1 question at the end. You get to wager a certain amount of points before I ask it, and you either double it or you'll lose it. So let's kick it right off, Aaron. We're going to start with the off-season events question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
We'll go medium. I'll try and see where we're at here. Test the waters.
Also, I forgot to do this. You're chasing. Oh, that's the wrong one. You're chasing Dave. Your buddy Dave at the top. 100.
Bro, I'm just trying to get above 0 points here. I'm trying to not be the worst. I'm not sending my bar up to Dave. That's like that's like Zach Wilson trying to top Josh Allen this year. It ain't happening.
Fair enough. So did you say the medium for the offseason?
Medium, yeah. Let's give me a medium.
All right, the medium offseason events question is: the Dolphins signed 3 new running backs to the roster this offseason. Name 2.
Raheem Mostert.
One.
Who else did they sign this year? What's that?
No time limit. You can take your time.
No time limit?
Yep.
Was it another San Francisco running back they brought in? Do they still have Gaskins?
They do, but he wasn't one of the new guys.
No, right. Chase Edmonds. My boy Kendall was big on Chase Edmonds, and Miami ended up with him.
Chase Edmonds is the 2 of the 3 running backs that Chase Edmonds and I'm drawing the blank myself now. But yes, you did get both of them correct. So that's going to be 20 points right on the first question. Not a bad start. So the follow-up true-false question is going to be this: true or false? The third running back that they brought in was Donta Foreman.
False.
Correct. It was not
All right.
Donta Foreman. It was
Is
actually
he on a team right now? Is Foreman on a team?
He is. He's on the Carolina Panthers. Actually.
Okay.
He went from the Titans to the Panthers. But the third running back was actually Sony Michel. So it's Chase Evans, Raheem
Interesting.
Mostert, and Sony Michel.
I missed
and they
that
have
one.
Gaskin, and they have Salvin Ahmed, who also saw touches last year. So they got a pretty packed room at the moment. But yes, you're correct. 30 points to start off, and not a bad start.
All right.
All right. The second question is the statistical question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Let's stay in the medium range.
Right. He's going to stay in the medium. Medium is, can you list the final standings of the AFC North last season?
Just the standings of the AFC North? So just the order?
Yep.
Not the records. Bengals won the North. Steelers must have been second. Then Ravens, Browns, or is that flipped?
It was flipped. It
was
flipped.
Man.
The Browns came in third. The Ravens came in fourth.
How close were they?
They finished with the same record, but
yeah,
the Ravens had, or the Browns had the tiebreaker. Yes.
All right.
I would imagine it's because I think they beat them both times, if I remember correctly. But either way, the Browns did have the tiebreaker. So that was close. That's a tough one. That's the caveat. It's like those two teams.
Coin flip. It was a coin flip in my mind, so that makes
pretty
sense.
much. That's what the medium questions are. Pretty much, it comes out to a coin flip.
Capacity.
But yes, unfortunately, it was the Browns and then the Ravens. But let's move on to Oh, you have a mulligan, by the way. Do you want to use it here? Do you want to save it?
I'll hold on to it.
All right, he's going to hold on to the mulligan. Let's move on to question number 3. This is the history question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Points wise, should I probably take a hard if I'm gonna? No, I'll stay medium. Medium.
He's gonna stay in the medium.
If I can get myself another 30, I think I got a chance to crack this top 5.
All right. So for the medium history question, Bills wide receiver Stevie Johnson mocked a player with a touchdown celebration, pretending he accidentally shot himself.
Plexico Burress.
Yes, correct.
Plexico All right, Burress. That was an easy one. All right.
That's another 20 points on the board. You're up to 50 now. The follow-up true-false question is going to be, just keep track of this because I'll lose track of the points. The true-false question is, this occurred in the 2011 season. True or false?
False.
It was 2011. It was.
Was it? I feel like that was too late. But yeah, no, he was still there. No. All right.
Yep, it was 2011. But that's all right. It's a big question to get right.
Right.
I didn't even finish the question. You had the answer out, so you drilled that one right on the head. All right. So, question number 4. This is going to be the draft question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard? You have 50 points on the board.
I have 50 on the board, so I need 20 to take Hans, right?
Hansel spot
or tie with him. So if I go medium, and I get the true false, I'll break him. Get him out there. So I'm going to go medium.
All right, medium it is. The draft medium is, which college had the most players taken in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft?
I'm going to go with Georgia.
It was Georgia. Georgia was the team with the most. So that's another 20 points. You are up to 70 now. This is to take over Hansel at the 5th spot. Name 2 of them. It's not a true false, but name 2 of them.
So it would be Jordan Davis.
One
would be one, and then who are the other Georgia prospects? God, I spent so much time doing draft work. It wasn't Quay because Quay fell. It wasn't Cook. Who was it? Oh my god. Trayvon Walker, right? He went.
Trayvon Walker, yep. Yes, sir. Trayvon Walker,
super early.
Overall pick, Georgia. Yes. That is correct. That is 2 of them. Just for the fun of it.
Who are the other ones?
So Quay Walker was one, actually.
Oh, okay.
He went to the Green Bay Packers. Who was the Eagles linebacker I was thinking of?
N'Kobe Dean.
N'Kobe Dean, that's what I was thinking of. But Quay Walker was in there. Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker, Devontae Wyatt, and Lewis Sign. Went to the Vikings actually.
Pickens, if I feel like Pickens didn't get hurt, he might have gotten in there too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Georgia draft class is
So that whole team is
ridiculous. It was unfair. But yeah, there you go. Another 10 points on the board. That puts you above Hansel at the number 5 spot. So you're in business. Depends on how you want to play it. You have a mulligan remaining, remember. You also have the wager at the end. So how do you want to play the awards question? Do you want to play a little risky? Do you want to play it safe?
80 I'll keep staying safe. I'm not here to impress anyone. So I'll go with medium and see where I can end up, see where I can land.
All right. The medium question is, can you name 4 of the 6 quarterbacks that played in the Pro Bowl this past season?
Played in the Pro Bowl? Oh, Jesus. No. I'll give it a shot. Mac Jones, for sure, played in the Pro Bowl. Who else from the AFC would have been there? Would have been trying to think who else would have been. Kirk Cousins. Would Kirk Cousins have been in the Pro Bowl?
In there.
All right. Okay. Could have been anyone important. Nobody important plays in the game. So I got 2 out of the 4.
Yes, sir.
Cousins, sort of around that level. Herbert.
Herbert was in there. That's 3.
So I need 1 more.
Yes, sir.
Bro.
Very good stuff.
Got to be another NFC, right? Was it just 2 from each, or wait, or
it could be any
4 out of the 6, so 3 of each played. Who are some mediocre NFC QBs that nobody would have been playing in a big game?
Murray. Kyler Murray is in there. Yep, you're correct. You managed to knock 4 out. There you go.
Who else? Who are the other 2?
So the other NFC quarterback was Russell Wilson, and the other AFC quarterback was actually Patrick Mahomes.
Oh man, that should have been an easy one. Why was he playing? What was he doing in the Pro Bowl?
I don't know. He must have had to blow off some steam after the AFC Championship.
Just trying to avoid hanging out with his girlfriend.
Yeah, for real. Honestly. I don't blame him. But yeah, there you go. You were able to knock 4 out. So that's the answer. Oh, well, that's a shame. I forgot that was the follow-up true false.
Patrick Mahomes, no.
Honestly, I'll give you the extra 10 because you already knew. Kind of. But it's okay. It's not a big deal. All right. Moving on. We'll move on to the well, you have a mulligan. Do you want to use a mulligan on one of the previous
am I at the end of the rounds here?
Yeah,
that's the final round. So yeah, which one did I not get right? The hit.
You can use it on anyone. I've been telling my guests that they can use it on whatever category.
I'll go back to what is it? I think it was not history, but what was the second?
Stats.
Stats, I think, is the one I missed, right? So I'll take a mulligan on stats on a medium.
All right. Man, I also forgot to preface this. I don't have another medium question.
That's all right. Give me the hard.
Hard. All right. The hard stats question is, which kicker led the NFL in points last
season? In points? I feel like this is a trick question because it's hard. So it's not. Tyler Bass.
It was not Tyler Bass. No, it actually was a combination, 150 points apiece for Daniel Carlson, the kicker for the Raiders, and then Nick Folk, the kicker for the Patriots.
Oh, man, I was gonna say Folk, but there's no way they scored that much. But
it's like you got to think of teams because you think of the high-powered teams first, then you got to remember those are the teams punching the ball in the end zone more often.
Sure.
So it's got to be a team that doesn't.
But those extra points do add up.
They do. They definitely do. And the Bills. I think Tyler Bass was up there. I think he was top 6 if I remember.
Yeah.
But
Tucker was my first thought. And then I remember they weren't super good last year. So all right. Well, I lost my mulligan.
That's all right. It was worth a shot. You shot for the heart with the mulligan. That's a smart thing to do. But there's the wager question remaining. You are up to 30, 50, 70, 80, 100, 110 points. What do you want to do with the wager question here?
So where does that
put
me? I'm in
110 puts you right
second?
Above Charlie in third. Oh, second. Yeah, Sterling had 105. Yep. Right above Sterling in second.
Man, I'd hate to lose second. I like to tell you, Sterling's a good guy, but I'll wager a 30-point swing here. Would that put me in first if I get there? What will put me in first if I get it?
Let me do my math again. 50, 70, 110. You would need 40 to tie, 50 to win. So 50-point wager would put you, 25-point wager would put you over.
25-point would put me over?
Yeah.
I'll do a 25.
All right.
Or no, I'll stick to 30. I said 30. I'll stick to 30.
All right. 30-point wager it is. Wager question. Name the order these quarterbacks were drafted in from 1 to 3. Malik Willis, Matt Corral, and Desmond Ridder for 30 points. This is for the top spot.
Trying to remember. I was at the draft, so I didn't follow all the other teams' drafts. Say Willis was first. Yes. I think Willis was first off the board. Then Ridder, then Corral. Then Ridder, then Corral. Willis, Ridder, Corral.
I think it was actually Ridder, Willis. Corral. I think Ridder was first.
Damn it.
Ridder went 374 to the Falcons.
Damn it.
Willis went 386 to the Titans, and then Corral went 394.
Way late.
Yep. It was the first two. The first two were the trip up. Everybody knew Corral was third, but that was the trip up the first two. But that's all right. Hey, I admire you going for 30 points there.
Yeah,
a lot of people have taken the wager.
Shoot your shot, man.
Absolutely. I admire that. But it is what it is. That's the game you played. But you're going to finish up with 110 minus 30 is 80. So 80 points.
I'm still above Hans.
Yep. You still get to pass Hansel, and I'm going to give him more shit on Twitter because I haven't. Before, when Hansel was on, this quiz game was, still a true work in progress. Yeah, so he got a pretty hardcore version of things. So he's got to get another shot at it. But you do pass him. He's booted out of the top 5 finally. That guy's been hanging around for too long. But congratulations.
Thanks,
It's been a great time, Aaron, having you on, man. It's been a really good one.
I appreciate you having me. Like I said, sorry it was difficult to get on, but I'm glad that we made it work.
Yeah, definitely. And it was a really good time, man. And like I said, I appreciate it. Do you want to give any last shout outs to, obviously I'm sure everybody knows where to find you, but
certainly, yeah.
Just a quick wrap up.
Yeah, no, Cover One, make sure you're following. I'm hoping that you already are across the board, all the Cover One content creators. We talked about it a little bit earlier on. Really proud of the team that we've put together over there. Love working with Greg. You can find Greg and I every Wednesday at the Cover One Buffalo podcast. This week we won't be on Wednesday, we'll be on Thursday, but we're having a great guest. Aaron Schatz from Football Outsiders is coming on. Going to talk about his predictions for the Bills, the football almanac they put together, and dive in some of the deep stats they do. But we got some big things coming up at Cover One, rolling out our premium subscription. You want to keep an eye on that here at training camp. We're doing some big stuff, announcing some new features to our premium membership. Rolling out some new looks for what we're doing. So we're working hard behind the scenes. This is a big year for Bills content creators, as you already know that. So make sure that you're following everybody, like the Caveman, like the fan base, like us, because it's going to be a good season. You're not going to be able to get enough Bills content once this season starts ramping up. It's slow, it's hard right now, but in a little bit here, another 6 weeks or so, we're going to be ramping right into hopefully a Super Bowl run Bills season that there's more content to go around than anyone can consume.
Oh yeah. You're right about that. Right now we're really kind of scratching and clawing our way, but it's going to get to a point where there's not enough time to consume and cover the content that we're going to be having shoved down our throats. But that's the beauty of the regular season. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, so be sure you're following Aaron. I have all the links to Aaron's socials down in his link tree down in the description. I have the Cover One link tree down in the description as well. So be sure you're checking all that out. Be sure you're liking the live stream if you enjoyed it enough. Be sure to subscribe. It certainly is free. If you don't like it, you can always take your subscription back. But hope to see you guys the next week, every single Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you guys in my next video, and I hope to see you guys later. Peace. Go Bills.